She walked into history not with an army, but with an aura. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, ruled some of the most powerful men of her time without ever raising her voice. While others used force, she used presence. Her power didn't come from dominance, but from composure. Think about that for a second. In our world today, respect often feels like a contest of volume, the louder voice, the firmer handshake, the sharper tone. Yet Cleopatra proved something timeless. Real authority is silent. It's the calm that makes others lean in, the confidence that doesn't need to be proven. Imagine walking into a room and instantly commanding attention, not because you demand it, but because people feel it. Cleopatra mastered that energy, and her secret lies not in seduction or strategy, but in how she showed up. In this video, we'll uncover the ancient techniques she used and how modern men can apply them to earn respect without aggression. Because the truth is, power isn't about control, it's about centeredness. And when you master that, you won't have to ask for respect. You'll embody it. The psychology of presence. She didn't need to announce herself. When Cleopatra entered a room, even the silence seemed to rearrange around her. Her presence didn't overwhelm, it centered everything. It wasn't beauty alone that made powerful men bend their pride. It was something deeper, something invisible. Cleopatra didn't chase attention, she commanded stillness. And that, psychologists say, is one of the purest signals of true authority. Modern science now calls it nonverbal dominance. Research from Princeton and UCLA shows that people form impressions of power in the first 7 seconds, and over 80% of that judgment comes from body language, tone, and tempo. Cleopatra understood this instinctively. She moved slowly, spoke deliberately, and looked people directly in the eye, long enough to make them question their own composure. In one famous encounter, she was smuggled into Julius Caesar's private chambers rolled inside a carpet. Most would have panicked, trapped, powerless, humiliated. Cleopatra, however, emerged calm and radiant. No flustered words, no pleading, just presence. Caesar expected desperation. What he met was serenity. In that quiet, she reversed the power dynamic. The ruler became the listener. Every man has been in that moment, a meeting, an argument, a negotiation, when emotions flare and the instinct is to push harder. We raise our voice, we rush our words, we try to dominate space. But aggression rarely builds respect. It often exposes insecurity. Cleopatra's genius was that she never fought for control, she embodied it. True strength, she proved, begins when you no longer need to prove it. Before you talk, pause. The world rewards those who can hold silence comfortably. It's a psychological trigger. People interpret calmness under pressure as confidence. Cleopatra mastered that pause, and modern leaders do too. A steady, grounded voice lowers the listener's anxiety and increases trust. Studies in negotiation show that the slower, more deliberate speaker is often perceived as the one in control. Power isn't loud, it's paced. Cleopatra's most powerful statements often came after a pause. Silence is tension. It draws people in. It creates anticipation. And anticipation is a form of authority. Try this. In your next difficult conversation, resist the urge to fill every gap. Let silence hang. Watch how people start leaning toward your words, not away from them. Think of modern examples. Barack Obama's pauses during speeches, Keanu Reeves' calm in interviews, or Denzel Washington's slow, deliberate tone. Each embodies that same energy Cleopatra carried centuries ago, unshakable composure. They understand what she knew all along. People respect what they can't predict, and they follow those who seem unmoved by chaos. In a world obsessed with noise, presence is rebellion. Men today often confuse dominance with disruption, but presence is about gravity, not volume. It's the art of holding your ground without aggression, the power of standing still while others rush to prove themselves. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated, know this: Cleopatra's secret isn't lost to history. It's a discipline, a way of showing up. You don't need a throne or a crown, just mastery of your energy. Because the moment you stop chasing attention, attention finds you. Next time you walk into a room, slow down. Speak half as fast as you think you should. Let silence be your armor. Respect will follow, not because you demanded it, but because you defined it. But Cleopatra's magic didn't stop with how she carried herself. Her true power came from understanding others just as deeply as she understood her own energy. And that's where her influence became unstoppable.
Cleopatra never chased loyalty, she crafted it. Her empire was not only built on alliances, but on understanding human nature at its core. She knew that people don't follow orders, they follow emotion, connection, and the feeling of being understood. She didn't demand loyalty, she designed it. Long before psychology gave names to concepts like empathy or emotional intelligence, Cleopatra lived them. She could walk into a room, sense the tension, and adjust her tone, her pace, even her humor to match the rhythm of her audience. To her, influence wasn't about control, it was about alignment. When she met Mark Antony, one of Rome's most powerful generals, she didn't overpower him, she studied him. She learned what moved him: pride, admiration, the longing to be remembered. She didn't speak to his mind first, but to his identity. Cleopatra's conversations weren't about politics. They were mirrors, reflecting the image each man wanted to see. It's easy to call that manipulation, but in truth, it's mastery, the ability to create harmony between what others feel and what you want them to believe. Modern research supports her methods. Studies in social psychology show that when someone subtly mirrors another's body language or emotional tone, empathy and trust increase dramatically. This is known as the chameleon effect. Cleopatra used it intuitively, matching her energy to the person before her until they felt she was a continuation of themselves. Think about it. The people we admire most are the ones who just get us. They listen before they speak. They reflect, not react. Cleopatra built her power on that exact principle. For many men today, connection feels complicated. We think influence means control, convincing, correcting, commanding. But Cleopatra's way teaches something softer, more profound. People follow those who make them feel seen. When a man learns to read energy instead of just words, he becomes powerful without intimidation. It's not about agreeing with everyone. It's about being tuned in. Because once people feel understood, they willingly give respect. No force required. Framework: the perception power formula. Observe first. Before speaking, study the room. Notice who's comfortable, who's guarded, who's hiding behind humor or confidence. Cleopatra never started by asserting, she started by absorbing. Mirror with restraint. Don't imitate, resonate. Reflect the pace, tone, and energy of the other person just enough for them to feel aligned with you. When energy synchronizes, resistance melts. Reward alignment. A small nod, a soft smile, a subtle acknowledgement. These create emotional reinforcement. Cleopatra used these cues masterfully. She made people feel seen for who they were becoming in her presence. There's a story told of Cleopatra meeting a Roman envoy who came to test her authority. Instead of defending herself or arguing politics, she asked him questions, calm, curious, disarming. Within minutes, the envoy who came to challenge her was offering advice, laughing, and lowering his tone. She didn't win through argument. She won through understanding. That's the quiet brilliance of influence. When people feel understood, they stop defending themselves. Men often think respect means control, but Cleopatra teaches the opposite. The man who listens first holds the advantage. The one who can reflect emotions without absorbing chaos earns trust in silence. In every interaction, with colleagues, partners, or even family, you can apply her art. Don't rush to assert your view. Instead, seek to see. Watch how tension turns to openness, how opposition becomes cooperation. Influence isn't about getting your way. It's about guiding others to want your way. In your next conversation, don't focus on proving your point. Focus on proving your presence. Listen deeply, mirror gently, and let people feel that you understand what they couldn't say out loud. That's Cleopatra's real secret. She didn't just speak to people, she spoke through them. But even with all her empathy and grace, Cleopatra never lost her edge. Her influence would have crumbled if not for one thing: boundaries. And that's what turned her charm into lasting respect.
Boundaries, the silent source of power. For all her warmth and intelligence, Cleopatra was not endlessly accommodating. Her influence had limits, clear, unwavering lines that no charm or flattery could cross. She understood something that many never do. Respect is not built by how much you give, but by what you refuse to compromise. Cleopatra could say no without ever saying the word. When people think of Cleopatra, they often picture luxury, charisma, seduction, but few recognize her greatest weapon: boundaries. She treated access to her time, her trust, and her emotions as privileges, not rights. Even the most powerful men in Rome knew you could win her attention, but never her submission. Boundaries to Cleopatra weren't walls, they were filters. They didn't block people out, they filtered out disrespect. In one defining moment, Roman envoys arrived in Alexandria with demands to control Egypt's trade routes. They expected negotiation, maybe even pleading. Instead, Cleopatra welcomed them gracefully, offered fine wine and conversation, but never yielded. She used diplomacy like a mirror, reflecting their arrogance back at them. They left confused, not angry, but uneasy. They couldn't read her, couldn't shake her confidence. That was her power, firmness without fight. In modern life, men often lose respect not because they lack strength, but because they lack standards. We overextend, over-explain, or overcompensate, hoping to be liked, accepted, or understood. Yet every time we say yes when we mean no, a piece of our presence fades. Cleopatra's genius was restraint. She knew that power leaks when it's constantly displayed. Her silence, her poise, her ability to walk away from those who underestimated her, that's what made people return. The truth is, boundaries aren't about control, they're about self-respect. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. Framework: the 3 boundary strategies. Value before validation. Cleopatra never sought external approval. Her sense of worth came from within, from knowing her history, her purpose, and her position. In today's terms, this means stop seeking validation before asserting value. You don't have to prove you're worthy of respect. You simply have to behave like someone who already is. Distance before reaction. When disrespected, Cleopatra didn't react, she recalibrated. She used distance as discipline. Emotional space is power. It tells others, I'm not available for chaos. In modern life, this means not responding instantly to disrespect, not matching others' tone, and knowing that silence can be the loudest answer. Exit before erosion. Cleopatra's story is full of moments where she walked away, from alliances, from deals, even from potential victories, when they threatened her dignity. Power fades not in confrontation, but in compromise. When respect begins to erode, exiting is strength, not weakness. One of her most subtle demonstrations of boundaries came with Mark Antony himself. When he began losing power and respect in Rome, his behavior grew erratic. Cleopatra supported him, but refused to mirror his instability. Even as their partnership became politically risky, she never begged, never pleaded. When Antony faltered, she didn't sink with him. She held her center. That's what real loyalty looks like: compassion without collapse. Every man faces a moment where respect is tested, at work, in relationships, within himself. The urge is to react, to fix, to explain. But Cleopatra's lesson is quieter and far stronger. Sometimes the most powerful move is to stay still, to walk away, or to simply not engage. Boundaries are what transform soft power into lasting power. Without them, empathy becomes weakness. With them, empathy becomes strategy. So if you've ever felt that people stop listening, talk over you, or take your kindness for granted, maybe it's not your words that need to change, but your walls. Start small. Say no to something that drains you. Pause before reacting when provoked. Hold silence when others expect explanation. Each act reinforces one truth. You train people by what you allow. And in the end, that's what made Cleopatra unforgettable. Not her beauty, not her lovers, but her boundaries. She ruled empires by ruling herself first. Centuries have passed since Cleopatra ruled the sands of Egypt, yet her lessons still echo in boardrooms, relationships, and the quiet moments when a man asks himself what it truly means to be strong. Because strength, as she lived it, was never about domination. It was about definition. She didn't demand respect. She embodied it. Every movement, every silence, every decision reminded the world, I know who I am. And maybe that's the message modern men need most. In a culture that rewards noise, distraction, and performance, Cleopatra's calm feels almost radical. She teaches that respect isn't earned through aggression, or clever words, or constant proof. It's earned when your energy speaks louder than your ego. Her story is not about gender or seduction. It's about mastery, of self, of space, of stillness. And the truth is, the man who commands his inner world will always command the outer one. So if you've ever felt unseen or underestimated, remember her, the woman who led an empire without raising her voice. Let her remind you that presence is power, empathy is influence, and boundaries are freedom. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to mean what your silence says. If this story made you reflect on leadership, composure, or how respect really works, there's more waiting for you. Because history's greatest leaders, male or female, all shared one secret. They didn't fight for control. They became it.